Hello everybody and welcome to this video. I'm joined today by my husband, David Warner Mathisen. Lovely to have you, Dave.
Lovely to be here. Thank you so much, Kesenya.
We're actually talking today about astrology and astrotheology, a very interesting combination of topics. And I'm going to hand it right over to Dave now to share something really interesting that he's been looking into about ancient runes.
Well, thanks so much, Kesenya. I'm really looking forward to our upcoming event, Stars Over Tahoe, where we will be talking about astrology and astrotheology. What is astrotheology? I like to actually use the word star myths or star mythology because astrotheology does have a few different interpretations or definitions, but the way it's often used is to describe the fact that the myths and the stars are closely connected. In fact, they're so closely connected that the myths are based on the stars, all the stories. But it's more than that, because just like astrology is more than just saying, well, there's 12 constellations in the zodiac. 12 constellations in the zodiac, but what does it mean for our life? And how does it impact our life? A lot of people out there, as everyone who's listening knows, don't believe that astrology is real in any way, shape, or form. It's just, pseudoscience or fake. But actually, I will be talking a little bit about how I believe the planets influence us, how those planets moving through the background of stars could have an impact on our life that's explainable and measurable. And of course, we have experienced it in so many different ways. It's not just coincidence. But how does that work? Well, how does something from beyond our understanding of physics or beyond the conventional understanding of quote unquote science impact us? And all the planets are named after the gods and goddesses, Venus, Jupiter. And if they're impacting us, it's impacting our life. It's something from beyond our normal realm of understanding. And so to say the myths and the stars are connected, well, the myths are about the gods, the other realm, the gods and goddesses who impact our lives. The god of war, the goddess of love, they impact our lives. How do they do that? And how does understanding that empower us? How does that help us to live a truly richer and more successful and happy life? That's what the ancient myths were all about. And so the gods and goddesses are real. The planets are certainly real, and they're impacting our lives in real ways. And the ancient myths talk about the different gods and goddesses. And we're all familiar with the stories of Jupiter or Jove,
Venus.
or Zeus, Venus, who was called Aphrodite in the Greek myths. Well, in the Norse myths, the gods and goddesses had different names, but the same general identifiable characteristics. And one of those characteristics was the crossing over and sharing the divine wisdom with men and women, with humanity. And that was specifically connected with the god Odin, who was the god of wisdom. And his day in our week, Wednesday, Woden's day, is associated with, in Spanish, that day of the week is called miércoles. So which planet or god might... It's Mercury. Mercury, the messenger. Miércoles is Wednesday in Spanish. Wednesday, Odin and Mercury are actually connected. And Mercury is the messenger god, the one who crosses boundaries and brings messages. And one time I was talking about this with somebody who was really into gematria. And I said, Odin rides a special steed, a magical horse with 8 legs, 4 in the front and 4 in the back. And he said, wow, that's amazing because Mercury has a gematria number that has 8 in it somewhere. I'm not an expert on gematria, but what's really interesting is Mercury has a planetary cycle or orbital cycle of 88 days. So in any case, the Mercury messenger brings messages across boundaries. That's what messengers do in our ordinary life. We can send a letter across boundaries, across the ocean to Australia. Well, crossing from the realm of the gods into our realm, there are special letters that the Norse myths used that are called the runes. And the runes are associated specifically with Odin. So that's what I wanted to share a little bit, because on this retreat, we will be talking about how we get these messages from the heavenly realm, from the planets, from the stars, from the myths, and how those messages can impact our lives. So I just wanted to briefly share a little discussion of the runes. And if I could, I'll share my screen here. So I've put up on the screen a set of runes. Now, the runes did change over the centuries, and there are different runic alphabets down through the centuries, and I'm not really going to get into all of that, but those who are really familiar with the runes will say, oh, those are the Elder Futhark runes. Futhark? What is Futhark? I hear someone asking. Well, let me show you what it means. So these are the way that the runes are usually arranged in different groups or sets, often sets of 8. So sometimes they're called the different ats of runes, or the different 8s, or the different families or clans of runes. But the arrangement, the first several runes, spell out Futhark, just like you could say a QWERTY keyboard, because our arrangement of the keys on a typewriter would start with a K and then have a W, so it was a QWERTY. This is Futhark. The first rune that you see there is corresponding to our sound of F. The second one is our sound of U. The third one is called a thorn, or sometimes it's given different names, but the TH letter is in Norwegian is actually pronounced usually like a T with a H sound on it. So my last name, Mathisen, if I introduce myself to someone from Norway, they'll say, oh, wait, you mean Mathisen? So they don't really say the th the same way. But anyway, we call it often the Futhark, and this is the Elder Futhark. So that across the top there, you can see F sound, U, TH, that's an A, the R. You can see that a lot of these letters look suspiciously, or the runes look suspiciously similar to the letters we're familiar with. That A is kind of like an A. The R is very much like an R. The F.
The K.
Yep. Yes. The K is like, half of a K or a C. The G looks like the letter we're familiar with for X, and then the W there. But it's very interesting, and nobody knows where the runes came from, except for those who have read the Norse myths. Then we know that they came from Odin. And I'll tell a little bit of the story of how he got the runes in a little bit. But let me just show the rest of the runes, because the runes came from the realm of the divine, the realm of where we get special wisdom. And Odin was always searching after wisdom. He is constantly in the Norse myths trying to find out about the fate of the gods, the Ragnarok, this last day that will come. And it hasn't happened yet in the myths. So he's constantly going around trying to find out more. He's an inquisitive, inquiring God, and he will cross all boundaries in order to find out the wisdom.
Sounds a bit like you and I.
Well,
wanting to know the truth at the bottom of everything.
The gods and goddesses are there to help us, and they're within us as well. So we have those different aspects of the god of war, the god of wisdom, or the goddess of wisdom in Greek, Athena, the goddess of love, Aphrodite. They're all aspects of who we are, and we have access to that if we can listen to ourselves. So that's one of the applications of the runes. People use the runes a lot like tarot or
Yes,
tarot
it's a
cards.
form of divination where they can speak or receive messages from their higher self or the divine realm through the instrument of the runes.
Exactly. So
I
that's
love them.
that's that's what we're talking about and exploring in this retreat, Stars Over Tahoe. We're talking about how does astrology help us in our life, and how do we apply it more deeply to our lives, and how does mythology and the gods and the realm of the gods apply to our lives. So the just to finish off that part about the similarity to the Latin alphabet, the destruction of the ancient wisdom has meant the replacement of all these other systems. You know, we used to have gods and goddesses. Every single culture on the planet had an understanding of the gods and the goddesses, and then there came along a stamping out of that ancient wisdom, and we were told, no, if you talk about multiple gods, that's bad. Well, no, it's actually extremely helpful for understanding ourselves, our universe, and our place in the universe. And so returning, or at least becoming more aware of and familiar with the ancient ways and even the ancient ways of writing that have been, forced to go underground due to various religious pressures or political pressures is valuable. So here's the Elder Futhark runic alphabet. And I won't say too much more about it other than you can look at it and, you can pause the video and learn it. There are variants to this, and I'll show a little bit about that. But here's where they have found runic inscriptions, where archaeologists or just, people, farmers in their field have found rune stones and brought them to the attention of those runologists who study the runes. And you can see mostly they're in Scandinavia. The modern day countries of Norway and Sweden have a lot of rune stones. Also Denmark, which is down here. There's an island off of Sweden that you can see to the right or the east there in the Baltic Sea. That's called Gotland, has a lot of runic inscriptions, but also down in the mainland, if you will, or the southern parts of Europe, you can see there's numerous runic inscriptions that have survived in Germany, even to the left or west of the letter G. You can see one that's basically in France. Over to the east, there's some in Poland, east of Germany, and even down towards the Black Sea. I'll put the Black Sea there for those who are familiar. So modern day Romania and other areas, Ukraine. So this is where they have found rune stones that we can study. And it's really fascinating. So I wanted to show an example of a rune stone. And
Isn't it beautiful?
It is beautiful. It's
Can I just say, there's so much familiarity in this design to something from the Aztec culture.
That's absolutely right. I didn't put it up in this slideshow, but maybe we'll talk about it when we go to Stars Over Tahoe if there's interest. Yes. Good observation. Kesenya's talking about the Tomb of Pakal, a very famous inscription, carving of what's thought to be like a sarcophagus lid or a tomb, a grave on a coffin lid of the Emperor or King Pakal. And I actually do talk about that in my book, Norse Myths. So I have a series of books called Star Myths of the World, Volume 1, Volume 2. So Volume 4 is all about the Norse myths, and I talk about the tombstone of Pakal. So very good that you noticed that. So it is beautiful. I left the background on this one just to show kind of the size. It's quite large. You can kind of see in the background a little house. If you look closely, you can even see some rubbish bins or what we call garbage cans. But you can see how big it is why I left that in there. But also what's really fascinating is, where are the runes on this? If you look closely enough, and I'm going to outline it so everyone can see it, The runes are carved into a serpent that is winding all the way around the edges and then cross the serpent's head and tail cross down at the bottom twice. It's like a knotted serpent looping all the way around this kind of, it's almost like a tombstone kind of a shape in that it's curved at the top because of the serpent's body. But let me outline that. Oh, by the way, this is the stone that's found at Dravla, which is in modern day Sweden, and it has this number U1163. So if anyone wants to go, you can look up the Dravla U1163 runestone and read all about it if you want on your own. But let me show, I've outlined the serpent there. Really beautiful carving into the, so it's carved into the stone, and then it's been kind of painted red. I don't know if that's done in modern times to make it more visible or not, but there is some indication that they would dye the runes. Well, they would use blood too on runes sometimes, or at least there's indications that they might have. So this is the serpent itself contains the runes. If you look closely, the runes are inside the serpent, and they actually start at the head right by the eye there, and then they wind all the way around. And here's what the inscription says. So I'll give everyone a moment to read that.
I have to go back to the other screen and do some hieroglyphic interpretation.
Well, actually, this one uses younger Futhark. So some of the forms are slightly different than what I just showed. But in between each word, the carving scribe who inscribed these runes, the artist who put these runes there, put a little X in between each word, which was actually common to separate the words. So what this says is it's an inscription, a memorial stone. Vidborn and Karlunger and Eringer or Ergeder and Nasi had this stone raised in memory of Erenbjorn, their able father.
How beautiful.
It's beautiful. So these rune stones were often memorial stones that were put up. Sometimes they'd be at a crossroads, but apparently there were burials near the crossroads too. But it's a memorial stone. Now notice there's no dates on it, which is interesting. You know, usually a tombstone has a date on there, but there's some indication that they weren't using the centuries that we think of at all until recently. That's a whole nother mystery that we can get into another time. But
that sounds like a hot chocolate around the fire conversation for Stars Over Tahoe.
Maybe it's so top secret. No, it's the whole question of dating is very interesting. But this is using younger Futhark. If you look at some of the symbols there and compare it to what I showed you before, a couple, like the letter at the end of the first word is different than what you saw on the other page. Or sorry, in the second word is ok, which is and the K, the second letter of the K is different than that little C looking rune that we had before. But anyway,
can you use this?
No, that's okay. I'm just alerting people to that fact. But as you point out, there's a lot more going on in this rune stone that's very interesting too. So it's very interesting that the runes are in the serpent, that they go around like serpent wisdom.
Yes.
And serpent, the runes, they kind of come from the other world, and the serpent.
Serpents, like, fascinatingly show up so often in the ancient myths and in the skies. Like, they're really quite revered in many ways.
And they bring wisdom. In any event, I will show some of the other stuff just to keep it moving along. But if you read the Wikipedia entry on this, they'll say, oh, well, of course, this shows that the runes were being used at the same time as Christianity because there's obviously a Christian cross in the middle of this runestone. And I looked at it and said, yeah, that's a bit of a long bow. Yeah, long stretch. But here's what they're talking about. Oh, first I'll point out there's this figure putting a sword. He's actually thrusting upward with a sword through the serpent. I've outlined it in red. It looks almost like the Gemini symbol in the snake, but that's because it's going in, coming out, going back in. But it looks like the astrological symbol for Gemini right up at the top where Gemini is located near the summer solstice summer for the Northern Hemisphere solstice is right there at Gemini. So Gemini is at the top of the year. So that's interesting. But also the shape of this figure, he's associated with a character in myth named Sigurd or Siegfried in German. Sigurd and Siegfried, who hides
This is
on
chaos.
not that Siegfried, just Siegfried.
Sorry. Keep going. Don't let
Agent
me into
86, yes.
it. 99.
Yeah, quite down 99. I'm just kidding. In the story, Siegfried or Sigurd fights a dragon named Fafnir, and he digs out a pit and hides in it, and as the dragon slithers over the top, he stabs upward and kills the dragon, but the poisonous blood of the dragon does him in, so they both perish in the story. But that's what most people, scholars and archaeologists believe, that this figure with the sword is a Sigurd or Siegfried fighting the dragon. But it's very interesting, the outline. Just take note of that. And then I'll show the cross. So you can see there is a cruciform pattern going on there. I've outlined it in blue here, or filled it in blue. And then there's all kinds of it's like a flowering cross, which is a pattern that's found in Celtic runestones or Celtic carvings and things.
It's the cross exclusive to Christianity.
Exactly. I would say this isn't definitive proof that they were using the runes at the same time as Christianity, but the younger Futhark is kind of the Viking age, and there was contact with potentially with Christianity during that time. So in any case, I'm going to just leave that whole that whole question for another time and just point out what's on this runestone. But there's some other figures I wanted to outline. So they're a little harder to see, but there's one here that's a Valkyrie, or it's thought to be a Valkyrie. It's a figure with kind of a long dress holding a mead horn. You can see there's like a horn in her hand and a wing. So the Valkyries were the name Val. Val means valiant ones or valorous. The slain, those who die in war, are the Val, and they go to Valhalla. And so the Valkyries are the choosers of the slain. So when you were in battle, if you felt a tap on your shoulder, it was a Valkyrie saying, you're going to die in this battle, and so fight really hard. And they would fight their hardest so that they could die with lots of valor. And then they would go to Valhalla, where they would drink mead, and the Valkyries would serve them, beer all night, and they'd party and eat roast pork. And then the next day they would go out on the fields of Valhalla and fight one another and chop off each other's arms and hands and, have terrible wounds. But then they would get healed at the big feast and go party again. So it was a life of constant
in Valhalla, is it?
Constant, and it's really the grave. It's interesting that this is like a tombstone.
Yeah.
The Valhalla is also it's a realm of the grave. The grave is Valhalla. Odin is also a god of the dead. But anyway, there is a Valkyrie in this stone, and it's interesting because this is celestial patterns that can be found in artwork around the world. And I'll point a little bit of it out. Here's another rune stone. It's not quite as elaborate as the other one, but I put it on there because it's got the same kind of flowering cross. This time the cross is a little bit more, you could say, well, yeah, maybe it is a Christian cross. Although, as you can see, there's like a tree above the cross. And there's the same, if you look closely, there's the same striding figure at the top with a sword. And the runes are in a serpent. It's not quite as elaborate or artistic as the one that I started with, but I just wanted to show, well, this pattern is kind of a pattern where they put the runes on the serpent. And so there's that, the striding figure. He's pointing the other way, but in artwork, they sometimes switch it around. You see this around the world. And there's the Valkyrie figure again, holding a curved, or in the other hand, instead of the horn on the left, this time there's a curved kind of crown-shaped arc on the right. So it's very interesting what's going on in these rune stones. And this is probably the first time I've ever spoken about it, and this will probably be the first time anyone's ever shown the connection to the stars, because runologists don't, unless they've read my work, don't realize that this is a pattern that's found around the world, and it's very distinctive and can be proven. I've spent thousands of pages writing about this in my various books that total, over 5,000 pages with examples.
To David's books, if you're interested in purchasing some, in the description to this video.
But so it's really interesting if the runes are associated with this pattern and they're connected to the stars, which I'm about to show. They come from that other realm, the realm of astrology, the realm of the gods, where the planets move through this background stars. So let me just show, in the interest of time, I'll kind of wrap it up, and then we'll talk more about it in Tahoe if you're able to join us there. This is a figure who is a very important constellation, and the name of the constellation is Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus means the serpent holder. Now look at the figure of Ophiuchus. I've outlined, that's the actual stars. This isn't me just making up how to connect them. That's the outlining system of H.A. Ray, who wrote Curious George. We can get into that another time, but the outlining system, you can find this outlining system in Stellarium, which is where I got this screenshot. None of this is manipulated. None of this is AI. None of this is Photoshop. This is the actual outlines. The central body of Ophiuchus is a tombstone shape. It's or an obelisk shape, and I believe that obelisks are also invoking Ophiuchus. The central body has a rectangle and a triangle on the top, and we should be able to see that very clearly when we go to Tahoe, stars over Tahoe, when we're there, weather permitting. No guarantees on the weather, but we're going in a beautiful time of year. But on either side, so the central body does have 2 feet below it, but on either side are 2 serpent halves. That's why it's called the serpent holder. Ophiuchus comes from the Greek word for a serpent and holder. So the left side, as you're looking at the screen, that's the serpent's tail. The right side, that's the serpent's head. And look at the runestone. You've got the tail on one side and the head on the other side, matching. And then that figure in the heavens directly above Ophiuchus is another very important constellation in the myths named Hercules, right above the serpent bearer. Now, Hercules is much further north than the zodiac. So the zodiac, as almost all the viewers of your channel know, that's where the sun, moon, and planets travel through. That's what the zodiac is traced out by the path of the gods, the sun god, the moon god or goddess. The different planets move through the zodiac, and they actually do move through Ophiuchus, but Ophiuchus is left out of the zodiac. Ophiuchus is in the zodiac, but above the zodiac. Ophiuchus is a boundary crossing figure, a figure that is in the zodiac, but not in the zodiac, and connects the zodiac with the higher realms of...
His foot crosses into the elliptic path around, around Sagittarius.
In between, right. And you can actually see Sagittarius and Scorpio. So in between Sagittarius and Scorpio, it's that left foot, well, the left one as we're facing Ophiuchus. And Ophiuchus is sometimes a male figure, sometimes a female figure, or sometimes a boundary crossing figure.
In the myths,
like Hermes, like Odin. So anyway, the piece of evidence that I will show. So first of all, Ophiuchus is holding a serpent, and we've got a serpent. Ophiuchus is also tombstone shaped, and we've got a tombstone shape here going on. But Ophiuchus is also directly below Hercules. And if you look closely, Hercules, the figure, is in this deep, very characteristic lunging posture.
Oh my gosh, yeah, just like
holding a sword. And then look at the figure that's at the top of both of these runestones is depicted in that same lunging posture. So this is very interesting. In my book that I just mentioned about Star Myths of the World, Volume 4, Norse Mythology, I identify the different gods and goddesses with different constellations, just like in the Greek myths they're associated. So in the Greek myths, there's a thunder god and a lightning god named Zeus, or Jupiter in the Latin, Jove. He has the thunderbolt weapon. He's very powerful. He has a full beard. If you look at Hercules, you can see the square-shaped head. That's the
Yeah.
full beard. Hercules is a son of Zeus, in case anyone's wondering, wait a minute, you're saying Hercules, the god Zeus is also associated with that same constellation. Well, in the Norse myths, there's a thunder god who carries a powerful weapon. That's Thor. And he has the same characteristics as Zeus in that he's jolly, but he has a short temper. He has a powerful weapon. He is also associated, and I can show, I won't go into it, with the constellation Hercules. Odin is associated with Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus figures often have a spear because of, see, the serpent could be also, you could draw a line through it and it looks more like a spear than a sword. So figures associated with Ophiuchus, including the goddess Athena, who's also a goddess of wisdom, she has a spear. So does Odin. So Odin is associated with Ophiuchus. Thor is associated with Hercules. Interestingly, that Valkyrie could be, oh, and before I get to the Valkyrie, the cross is associated with Ophiuchus. Ophiuchus is the figure that connects mankind to heaven. Well, the Jesus figure in the Bible is associated with Ophiuchus. And the cross in between two thieves, that's the cross in between the two serpent halves of Ophiuchus.
Yeah.
You can clearly
Running
see.
from Antares, is it there? Right up
Right.
there.
I've drawn it straight down to Antares. It's a very clear, I talk about this in other places, but that's why we have this cross shape in the
Yeah.
Ophiuchus figure with a Hercules figure on top. I hope that this is
It makes
somewhat convincing to
yeah.
your,
Yeah.
I hope that this is convincing to your, I can show this with lots and lots more evidence. I'm
Yeah.
just touching the surface right now, but this is how the myths are connected to the stars. And we see it around the world over and over.
Not just myths. This is ancient tradition and ancient language connecting to the stars here.
And ancient artwork.
Ancient ceremony too, I imagine, with a, tombstone and everything. Like
Stones, yeah.
the ancient peoples, pre-Christianity and pre-Abrahamic religions really lived in harmony with the divine, with the heavens, with the whole, universe. Paganism, I guess, is very much like what we would call that culture of living in connection with the natural rhythms and natural cycles, including the heavens and the relationship with the heavens. It's just so beautiful.
It is beautiful. And also you could add in connection with your ancestors. Look at this stone is about the memory of their able father who, they're expressing gratitude towards the generations that came before and that made their lives possible. And they would memorialize, and sometimes they would pour a horn of mead or ale over the stone or over the grave as an offering or as a connect. And this is something that Christianity tried to stamp out, but that's another story. But
another one for the fire up at Lake Tahoe.
But I did want to point out that cross. That's why I would argue you have these cross shapes. It's not necessarily that it's corresponding with Christianity. It's corresponding with the stars. And the Valkyrie figure could be a Sagittarius figure. So Sagittarius, I didn't actually outline Sagittarius. She's down to the left on the screen. She does have a long dress, she or he. All the constellations play male and female figures in the myths, but there is a kind of a horn or arc next to Sagittarius. It's the southern crown, but also in front of Hercules, there's the northern crown. I'm just going to outline that. That's the northern crown. And because of the positioning, it's possible that this Valkyrie is referencing that in some way. But I also believe it's possible, I'm going to outline the stars of a different constellation here, Andromeda. Andromeda plays the role of an angel in a lot of the Bible stories, which I talked about in other places. And she, in the Greek myths, is chained to the rock. So you can see the chains on one of her hands, but it looks like a drinking horn. The two,
I'm having
she's
trouble
up.
seeing
Okay,
it.
so she's upside down.
Oh, okay.
Her legs are towards the top of the screen, just the way I've rotated it to fit on the
Yeah.
page. But that's where the moon will be when we are at Stars Over Tahoe. So Andromeda will be directly above in the sky if we're able to see in the glow of the moon. But Andromeda, the head is pointing down um, in this orientation. So the arms are outflung and the legs are pointing straight up. And so the arm that's below the word Andromeda has two chains coming off the wrist.
Yes.
Can you see that?
I see that, yes.
That's possibly the drinking horn that's being referenced. And the reason why that could be a possible interpretation is on the other side of the Dravla U1163 stone, there's this other figure who also looks like a running figure, but I would argue there's a distinct difference in this running figure from the one that I've outlined in red. Can you see the figure I've outlined in green? The front leg is very straight.
Yes.
The back leg is way back, like he's running forward. He or she is running forward. Kind of has an oblong head, but is running forward with the legs straight and right near Andromeda, down below Andromeda in the same region of the sky.
That is it, Aquarius.
It's Aquarius. So look at the outline of Aquarius, the running shape of Aquarius with the strange shaped head, kind of a diamond shaped head, but the front leg is very straight, and that shows up in different myths in different ways. But a running forward, headlong runner in the Greek myths, when you see someone described as a headlong runner or running headlong, you can suspect that it corresponds to Aquarius, and then you can look for other clues. But that figure that I've outlined in green, I would argue, could be connected with Aquarius. So this is just to show the Norse myths and the rune stones are connected to the stars, just like all the other ancient traditions around the world. But they're about giving us tools to use in our own life. This knowledge isn't just, like a puzzle, a crossword puzzle. Okay, let's figure out which figure is which. No, this knowledge is about how do we get a message from the heavens, which is what astrology is all about. And the story of the runes is connected with Odin. He doesn't just give the runes to humanity. He has to get the runes first. He has to get them by hanging on a tree. So often the cross in Christianity is called the tree, if you look back in the earlier languages. But that tree that Odin hangs on is the tree of Odin. It's called Yggdrasil. Ig is one of the names of Odin in his terrifying, terrible aspects. It means the terrible one because he's the god of war, and the Valkyries bring him the slain to Valhalla. So he was also known as Ig, the terrible one, and his tree or his steed is Yggdrasil, the steed of the terrible one, the tree that he hung himself on. So I'll just read from the Poetic Edda. The Edda that describes this is called the Havamal, the words of the High One. Har or Harvamal means the mal, the sayings of the High One. And in this poem, Odin is describing how he obtained the runes. I know that I hung on the wind-tossed tree all of nights 9. 9 long nights he hung on the tree, wounded by spear, bespoken to Odin, or sacrificed to Odin. Myself to myself. So Odin sacrificed himself to himself. What is it trying to tell us? I don't know. This wisdom is obtainable by us, but we have to connect to our higher self or deeper self we do have a way of obtaining this wisdom, but sometimes we have to go through a lot to get it. Wounded by spear, bespoken to Odin, bespoken myself to myself, upon that tree of which none telleth from what roots it doth rise. Neither horn they upheld, nor handed me bread. No one offered me food or drink. I looked below me, aloud I cried, caught up the runes, caught them up wailing, thence to the ground fell again. So that's the translation by Lee Hollander. You can find other translations, but he hung on this tree whose roots go down so deep nobody knows. He also mentions in that same poem that he had to drink from the well of Mimir, who's an Jotun. And so the Jotuns are this very old race that have a lot of wisdom. And he also had to drink from the mead. So there's these different myths about how Odin got this wisdom and then shared it with humanity. And I talk about those in that book that I mentioned, but it comes from another realm and it has a message for us. And he shares them with humanity. But as I mentioned before, what's interesting about this runestone is it clearly has aspects of Ophiuchus carved into it. And Odin, I have argued with a lot of evidence and detail in that book, is associated with Ophiuchus. So, and you can see by the spear, and he has two birds who accompany him, the two ravens. There's two birds in the sky right nearby Ophiuchus. That's the constellations of Aquila the eagle and Cygnus. Yeah, Cygnus the swan with the star Deneb. We'll hopefully see all those when we go to Stars Over Tahoe. But these runes are for us in our life. These messages from beyond. We all have experiences where we've gotten some kind of a message from.
Are you talking about omens and?
Well, or just premonitions, or there's everyone's life. When I start talking about this subject, people will say, "Oh, this happened to me when
Synchronicity.
I was thinking about a friend that I hadn't talked to in 10 years, and then the phone rang and it was them, and I couldn't imagine how they could have possibly known that I was thinking about them at that moment, or I was just about to call them and I hadn't spoken in 10 years. That kind of, there is something in us that knows things from beyond, and the runes are one way that we can actually hear those messages or listen to our higher self, just like tarot and other tools of divination.
I've certainly used runes when I've needed an answer and I'm feeling confused about something, and gone to the runes and received a message that helped allay my fears often, or gave me some guidance and so forth. They're a wonderful divination tool, and I, like you and I both believe that comes from the other dimensions, the other realms that we've been speaking of. The heavens, if you want to call it that, but it's way more than that. So thank you, Dave. That was amazing, as always. And the runes and the Norse mythology actually tie in very significantly to what we're going to experience up at Lake Tahoe in the Stars Over Tahoe retreat. Now, I'm not going to give any more away than that, but you'll find out when you come and join us just why talking about Norse mythology and runes is so significant to this particular retreat at Lake Tahoe. We can't wait for you to join us and share some more ancient knowledge with us and some astrological wisdom. I'll be teaching on a number of topics astrologically as well. There is just so much that you're going to get out of this connection with other ancient knowledge lovers here at the Stars Over Tahoe retreat. So if you'd like to find out more, simply go to the link in the description below and you'll find out all the information that you need. David's books and connection to his works will also be in a description to this video. And we look forward to meeting you, getting to know you, and developing a great relationship of friendship with everybody who goes to Stars Over Tahoe. Thanks for joining us for this video, and we'll see you in September.